Yes, we're back. Season 2, and they've not learnt a thing. If you've been paying any attention to all of the stuff that's been said in the run-up to Season 2, you'll know that they've listened to their audience, they say. They've listened, and they're making it much more action-packed. And the thing that they push most, it's all female directors. Yes, because all female directors, rather than make sure we get the best director, whether male or female, is clearly the way forwards. They've not learnt a thing, have they? And then we have this recap. And all of a sudden, all the memories come flooding back of just how bad Season 1 was. We're not just talking about how bad it was compared to the lore, we're talking about how bad it was in terms of storyline, in terms of armor appearance, in terms of so many things. Yes, they had a few nice CGI shots of the landscape and things like that, but the rest was just awful. We're in for a long ride. So here we are. An origin story for how Sauron became Halbrand. So the first thing that we have is an image with some writing telling us that this is the dawn of the Second Age. If this is the dawn of the Second Age, there's some serious issues timeline-wise. But we'll get back to that in a minute. So, the start of the Second Age, Sauron is supposedly trying to gain favour of the Orcs. He's trying to get their allegiance. And we have Adar standing at the front with him, because Adar is this really important character with the Orcs who is never written about, doesn't exist. He's a figment of the creators of Rings of Power. It's a figment of their imagination. Yeah, it's Adar. It's a waste of energy, a waste of time. But anyway, Adar is there standing beside Sauron, and Sauron is claiming to be the new big bad, and that shouldn't even be necessary. Orcs serve the darkness. Morgoth was the Dark Lord. Morgoth got defeated. We look at Morgoth's lieutenants. The Balrogs, all except one of them, have been killed. That one Balrog that is left is currently under Khazad-dûm. So we know that he's not around. The Orcs have no idea about him. Which leaves Sauron. The Orcs would automatically serve Sauron, but no. No, Rings of Power decide that they know best, they know how the Orcs would work, and the Orcs have clearly got to make a decision as to whether they're going to follow him or not. And they don't. We have an almost coronation scene where Adar's about to put a crown, remember that crown? About to put that on top of Sauron's head, and then he turns it upside down and stabs him in the back, and then the Orcs pile on, and the Orcs... Okay, yeah, there's a couple of moments where Sauron's able to swing and send them flying, but the Orcs defeat Sauron. Yes, the Orcs, the Orcs, the creations of the darkness, defeat the new Dark Lord. Oh boy. Sauron defeated elves that would have been able to survive for longer than he did. Yet he gets killed, apparently, the Orcs think. So his physical body gets defeated, and that body, there's at the point at which they think he's dead, there's a light that shines out of him, and then the body's left. and they think he's dead, and they claim that Adar is the leader of the orcs. Hence why Adar is all important in Series 1. And then we see Sauron's blood dripping and oozing down through the cracks to the underground area below the citadel at Forodwaith. And then we have Sauron's body slowly but surely reconstituting itself, first to being some kind of ropey, stringy, noodly type thing. And eventually it becomes bigger and bigger as it consumes things. And eventually it escapes out. It takes over a woman's body, and so we have the physical manifestation of Sauron as Halbrand. Halbrand, who then goes and escapes away from the hills, the mountains, wherever it is that he's escaping from at this point, and eventually joins the Southrons, who are fleeing. And there's a group of them that are getting on a ship, and he joins them. And all the time, in Series 1, we were to be thinking that Sauron actually didn't want to be Sauron anymore, that Halbrand was happy to be Halbrand, he didn't want to be Sauron, and things were going to be fine. But there's a problem with this. Halbrand, when he's on the boat and it's just been attacked by the sea monster, he steals something from a guy that he could have saved, that then is the thing that makes Galadriel think that Halbrand was the king of the Southrons. There is clearly a plan in place that he's trying to gain favour in various ways. And yet at the same time, they're trying to say, no, everything's fine, everything's fine. This isn't about trying to hide the truth from us. This is about the fact they have two different stories. They've got two different stories they're going with, and it's like they can't make up their minds. They know they have to go one way, but they want to go another. It's just utterly pointless. Now, let's get back to this whole beginning of the Second Age thing. When we meet Halbrand, it's when Galadriel first meets him, and eventually they end up getting found by Elendil, who takes them back to Númenor, and we have Queen Regent Miriel, and Tar Palantir is sick and hidden away. And this is over 3,000 years after the dawn of the Second Age. It did not take 3,000 years for Sauron to reconstitute himself into a body. I'm sorry, that's just preposterous. Sauron does not take that long to become whole again. Ignore the fact that the elves and the Númenorians had contact, I believe I'm right in saying it's probably about 1,500 years prior, maybe even less than that. So more than that. I can't remember quite offhand where it was, but certainly over 1,000 years before. And yet, even if we ignore all that, their own timeline now is just ridiculous. It's going to be a long, long season, isn't it? So we then have the setting where Galadriel and Elrond are racing on horses. Boy, does Morfydd Clark like her horse races. Galadriel is chasing after Elrond, and Elrond, as we will find out, has the rings with him. And Galadriel is chasing after him, clearly because Elrond has stolen the rings and is running away with them. Why he's running away with them, we don't know. It will become a little bit silly in a minute. But anyway, they get to Lindon. Elrond gets to being before Gil-galad first. And he's clearly said what happened with regards to Sauron. And Sauron is then brought up when Galadriel gets there. We have the fact that he exists still being revealed. And I believe that Gil-galad speaks for all of us who are watching the Rings of Power right now when he groans. Anyway, we move on to the rings. And Gil-galad, who's not been told anything as far as we're aware about the rings, declares that the rings are the saviours of Middle-earth. They are the thing that will fix all of the problems that they've been having in Middle-earth. Okay, doesn't know this and yet knows it. Second problem, Elrond has decided that the rings need to be destroyed. I mean, there's an element to which, okay, you've discovered that Sauron was there just before they were being made, so maybe he's had some influence on the process. Okay, maybe. But you don't know this. You've not tried anything with the rings. You don't know what's going on. Either way, you don't know. And Elrond doesn't trust the king, who says, give them to me. And eventually, we see him jump over a cliff, following a waterfall. And I guess they turned off the damage meters because, as we'll find out later, he clearly survives. Not that we didn't know already, because, of course, we know Elrond is alive in the Third Age. But anyway, Elrond jumps over a waterfall, and they're now after him to get the rings. Jump back to the south, back with the orcs, and for some reason Sauron has decided to give himself up to Adar and the orcs. Why? He's gone all the way back there. The impression that was suggested to us at the beginning, sorry, not at the beginning, the end of season 1, was that he's gone there and he's taking control. No, apparently Adar's in control. He claims that it's all to do with wanting his people to be released. His people, the ones that are enslaved, they're either getting killed or they're swearing to serve Adar. I wouldn't trust them. If he were who he is claiming to be, his people are in Pelargir. That's where they've all gone. But apparently, no, this is where he wants to go. And so he's thrown in chains. Yeah, Sauron is put in chains. And am I going to survive this whole series? Oh, good. We're off. Oh, well, wait. No, it's not good. It's not good. We're now back with Nori and with Gandalf. Gandalf's with his Harfoots again. And to make it worse, Nori is teaching Gandalf how to be a wizard, to the point where she even teaches him how to use his power again to give them food, because they've run out of food, because they're not very good at working out how to look after their food, it seems. Well, I mean, fair play, they are actually hobbits, even though they don't want to call them hobbits. They do eat a lot. But anyway, Gandalf blows up a tree, and they get to eat bugs. Yay! We're back with Sauron. He's in jail. Isn't this fantastic? There's some beating up of Sauron. There's clearly still an attempt to make us feel sorry for him. And I don't know why they keep on doing that, because clearly we know who he is. And then we have a bit where he talks to a warg, and he's clearly gotten the warg on side. But it's this whole two sides to Sauron. He's a good guy who's getting beaten up. Look, it's the bad guy. Clearly, if the bad guy, Adar, is beating him up, then Sauron can't be the bad guy. Are they trying to suggest that it's because of an elf that Sauron becomes the big bad? I don't know. I'm almost giving up with trying to understand this at this point. And now we've got another harkening back to the original stories, the true Tolkien elements. We meet Círdan. Círdan is where Elrond goes after he's jumped off a waterfall and suffered no broken bones. Círdan is where he goes to try and solve the problem of the rings. I mean, at least this tallies with the origins of Elrond, given that he would have been, Círdan would have been the person in charge of the havens that they went to when, or rather, where their parents went to, and where he and Elros were born. So that at least makes sense. And we're already getting foreshadowing to what they're going to be mentioning a little bit later. Well, I say mentioning, going to be suggesting later that the rings are calling out and Círdan can hear them. Yay. Rings of power are like the Ron ring. And now, more girl bosses. Yes, there's yet another female general for the elven armies. Another woman who's going to be leading the elves into battle as they try to search for Elrond, and they're going to arrest him where they can. The less said about this, the better. So, Gil-galad and Galadriel send their troops out. Galadriel goes and when they get to Círdan's place, they send Galadriel in first because she wants to chat with Elrond. And we discover that Círdan has gone out in a boat and he's going to destroy the rings. Yes, Círdan is going to destroy the rings. Okay. Next. Yay, more hobbits again. And this time we've now got Poppy as well as Nori. Yay. Even better. Poppy's now telling them which way to go because she's brought a map. So the hobbits are leading the Maiar. The hobbits are leading the Maiar. They're telling Gandalf where to go. I wish Gandalf would tell them where to go. Foreshadowing starting to pay off. Círdan is now being seduced by the rings. He was about to throw them in and something happened, some kind of explosion in the water. We never find out what that was. But the rings are speaking to him. And he doesn't know what to do. He can't destroy them now. Oh boy. Sauron is now declaring allegiance to Adar. Now, admittedly, he words it by saying he swears allegiance to the Lord of Mordor. So effectively, if he thinks he's the Lord of Mordor in his own mind, then he's swearing allegiance to himself. Okay, makes sense there. But rather than taking control, rather than ripping every single limb from Adar's body and then putting his head on a pike, Sauron is all about deceiving. Because he's the deceiver, and we've got to show him deceiving rather than having him take control first of his base in Mordor and then go and deceive the elves. He doesn't have to deceive everyone. We know this from how Tolkien writes him. And even if you're not going by Tolkien's writings and going just by Peter Jackson's film, look at Sauron when he turns up and fights. But no, he's got to deceive everyone now, because that's the only way that it works. So he gets allowed to go and try to deal with the elves for Adar. And Adar doesn't trust him, so he sends people to spy on him, though, as the rest of this episode and the next two episodes would seem to suggest, that doesn't really happen because we never see any spies going after him. But anyway, yeah. Círdan has reappeared with the rings. He has reappeared. He's there as Gil-galad is about to send all the elves away to Valinor because they're declaring that the whole of Middle-earth is lost because the trees are losing all of their flowers. They're losing all of their leaves. They're losing every single bit of life that there is. And Círdan appears, and he's wearing a ring. Does he give all 3 rings to Gil-galad, his king? Okay, I know. Círdan is one of the oldest elves in the whole of Middle-earth, both Valinor and Middle-earth, where they are. No, he doesn't. Even though he's one of the oldest, he would still have allegiance to the king. But no, he has one on, and he then gives the 2 to Gil-galad. And for some reason, Galadriel, who's been in the king's bad books, he wanted to get rid of her so much that he sent her to Valinor at the start of season 1. He's been angry with her for pretty much the entirety of the Rings of Power, season 1 and episode 1 of season 2. And yet she gets to put on a ring as well. And the way that it's portrayed is also that they are seduced, that the rings are speaking to them. And yet, the rings work. All 3 rings are placed on elven fingers, and the whole of Lindon is restored. And all of a sudden, Elrond is looking very silly. Elrond, the wisest elf, by the time that we get to the Second Age. Indeed, at the point at which we join Rings of Power, at the beginning of the first season, strictly speaking, he should be, as it were, the hand of the king. He should be the main advisor to Gil-galad. He's the one that gets sent out to help Eregion when they hear it's being attacked by Sauron. But no, Elrond is just this silly little boy, this silly little half-elf who knows nothing. So finally, we are at the end of episode 1, thankfully. Sauron, as Halbrand, has returned to Eregion. And in Eregion, we see Celebrimbor deciding whether or not he's going to let him in. Now, we know that Galadriel said at the end of season 1, assuming you watched season 1 and have got the brain rot that everyone else has, we know that Galadriel said, don't treat with him. Don't let him get in again. But she didn't say why. So all that Celebrimbor has got to go on is the fact that she said don't talk to him. And that's where we're left. But there is a massive problem now, because they seem to be trying to suggest to us that the time that it took for Sauron to go from being at the dawn of the Second Age to when Halbrand is on the raft is a really long time, that we're well into the Second Age. And yet, time frame wise, from the point at kind of just about the end of the second, no, at the end of the first series, the last episode, which is pretty much straight following into the start of season 2, Sauron has walked down to Mordor from Eregion, and then towards the end of this episode, he's then started walking back up. And we do see that he's on a horse. So, okay, the way back up might have been a bit quicker. But he's basically gone Eregion to Mordor and back. Now, for starters, Eregion to Mordor, that route, if he's taking the route of the Gap of Isengard, or the Gap of Rohan. Obviously, Isengard doesn't exist at that point, and neither does Rohan. But if he's taking that route that Boromir was suggesting that the Fellowship should take, that's going to take a really long time, not least for the fact that it's covered in trees. Remember, the Great Forest is still there. Fangorn is massive as a forest. So he'd be travelling all the way through woodland area, if not dense forest. The other options he has are to go over the mountains and then follow the Anduin, or to follow the coastal route. Either way, it's a longer route than the Fellowship took. And think about how long it took Frodo and Sam, who they had a boat for part of it. But if I'm remembering right, it took about a year. Sauron has managed this in human form, because we're not being shown that he can turn into anything else. In human form, he's managed this in the space of 2 episodes, which are not that far spread out timeline-wise. They have absolutely no concept of how to spread this thing out properly. Anyway, episode 1 done. 7 more to go.